and welcome to Field Lab Earth, the podcast that's all about past and present advances in the fields of agronomic, crop, soil, and environmental sciences. Today, we'll be talking to Dr. Bijesh Maharjan. Researchers, advisors, and farmers alike know that soil health is important, but taking steps forward in the knowledge of which practices to use and their impacts can be difficult. Enter the soil health cycle, an iterative approach to help track how practices and their implementation take soil health forward. In this episode, Bijesh joins me to discuss his work on the soil health cycle. I'm your host, Abby Morrison. Let's talk about science. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today we have Bijesh Maharjan with us. Bijesh is an associate professor and extension specialist in soil science and agronomy at the University of Nebraska Panhandle Research and Extension Center in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. He received his undergraduate degree from the Moscow State University, a master's in environmental engineering from the University of North Dakota, and a PhD in land and atmospheric science, soil science track, from the University of Minnesota. He leads research and extension programs focused on soil and water quality, soil productivity, and precision nutrient management in irrigated, limited irrigation, and dryland crop and forage production systems in the Nebraska Panhandle. He has authored and co-authored over 50 peer-reviewed scientific articles. His recent work on soil health, soil conservation, and water quality is noteworthy. Recently, his team coined and proposed two impactful concepts, soil health gap and soil health cycle, to promote science-based soil conservation and overall soil health management. Hi, Bijesh. How are you doing today?
Hi, Abby. Thank you. I'm very good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are so excited to talk to you today about one of those key new concepts, which is the soil health cycle. So, to get us started, can you just introduce the soil health cycle itself, kind of what it is and why we need it, how it's different from other types of cycles people have heard of before, as well as kind of the goal of the research paper?
Thank you. So, soil health cycle, here we are talking about actually soil health management cycle that involves several interdependent actors and factors, ranging from our hardworking farmers to soil health practices, measuring the soil health benefits in terms of soil health indicators, and also linking it all the way to the soil functional outcomes, desired outcomes such as productivity, profitability, and sustainability, and thereby informing with those research-based data the incentive programs or policies that will hopefully continue this virtuous cycle to achieve our goal of soil health over time. And right, I mean, we know soil nutrient cycle, soil carbon cycle, where we specifically follow a nutrient or carbon, how it transforms, gets through different phases in soil, in water, in atmosphere, also through crops and soil biota. But unlike those nutrient cycles, soil health cycle is more analogous to human health care management cycle, because here we are basically talking about actually management cycle. So in human health care, they plan the service, how they run the service, execute it, assess the impact, make some inferences so that they can iteratively improve their human health care services. So similarly, here we are proposing, as farmers implement soil health management practices, we do try to document and determine any benefit directly to the soil health parameters. But we are proposing, or we are making a point that we have to connect it all the way to the productivity and profitability and sustainability outcomes so that our incentive programs or maybe policies, all those are informed well so that this cycle continues. So pretty much this idea came up with the thinking that if soil health, just like human health, if it is such a simple topic that we all can agree upon. Yet, when it comes to execution, it's complicated, right? We all know we need to be healthy, but we can be sure that not everyone is healthy. Same with the soil. We all agree it needs to be healthy, resilient, but why still we see the bare ground? Why we still see the blowing dirt on the farm? Because it's complicating. And here we try to put together all the interdependent steps and actors and factors so that we become more due diligent as we try to achieve our soil health.
Awesome. That is such a good overview of the cycle, and longtime listeners will immediately sense why I was really excited to talk about this. I love seeing different groups collaborating, coming together around a common cause. So, in this paper, you were kind of looking at this cycle as well as some of, I believe, the existing literature about these kinds of things, correct? Can you give an outline of that?
Right. As we put this cycle together as researchers, right, what's our role in this cycle? What we can offer to this feedback cycle. So, as a researcher, we identified some knowledge gap, and if we could fill up that gap, definitely we'll be playing our significant positive role in this cycle. So the first part of the work was to propose this perspective, as we are looking at the soil health management, we need to be as comprehensive as possible. And then second part of the work is to look at the research gap. And what we found is that as research literatures report data connecting the soil health practices to improve soil health indicators, or they show the soil health practices impacting the productivity or sustainability. So the linkage of practices to indicators and the soil function outcomes are primarily reported separately. So our point is if you can demonstrably link practices to indicators to the outcomes like productivity and sustainability, then it will be very, very easy to uh, motivate the adoption and keep the practices sustained.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah, looking for the proof in the pudding to kind of move things forward. So, I think a great place to start then is with each part of the cycle itself, kind of what all is included in that step. So, the first step, as in so many things, is the human dimension. So, let's start there.
Right. And what health has done to our soil science is it has brought the biology to the forefront, right? So, rightfully, in our cycle, also, human dimension is at the first because at the end, farmers are the ones on the ground who has to consider so many things before they implement anything. So, farmers as a human dimensions, they are impacted by regulators, by uh, some policies or incentivizers too, and also their own livelihood depends on farming, plus their motivation for stewardship. So there are so many elements that we bundle together as a knowledge incentives. So there are so many good factors that might incentivize growers to do uh, or implement known soil health practices. And bear in mind, right, whatever a farmer does on his ground will either regenerate the soil or degrade the soil. There's no other way. So hopefully there is enough impetus, there is enough motivation for growers to adopt soil health practices. So that's our first element in the cycle, who really starts the wheel revolving.
Sure, sure. Shout out to farmers. Big fan. Love those people and all the people working hard to help them out. So, farmers make decisions based on many of those things we discussed, and that kind of kicks us over into the next step, which is agricultural practices. So, can you tell us about that?
Right. And then as farmer who works upon their land, fortunately enough, there's pretty wide consensus around what practices really restore or enhance our soil health. So things like less tilling or no tilling at all, cover cropping, integrating, if possible, livestock on your ground, um, adding more diversity, some carbon amendments. So those practices, I think it's pretty well accepted. Um, Things might change, differ by your site specificity, what kind of resource constraint you have on your ground. Sometimes by your soil or environmental conditions might affect what you pick from those tools available for you from your kit. So those are practices known, very well tested on the ground. So hopefully farmers have capability and resources to implement one or several of those known practices.
Awesome. And then naturally that kicks us over into soil health.
Yeah, like someone said, right? Unless you can measure, how can you really succeed? So, measurements becomes a critical part of our soil health progress for various reasons. We have to keep monitoring and really determine how the practices implemented have really improved the soil health. There are scores of soil health properties or processes that one can measure. In fact, there are so many of them. But again, fortunately, there has been a lot of literature out there, research out there that has already determined and selected few key indicators responsive to management. So thereby, you don't have to really go out and do all possible tests. So NRCS has its own suite of soil health tests. Um, Soil Health Institute has, from their big soil health work, come out with three indicators which are known to be very responsive to management. So measurements is key to keep track of our success.
Awesome. All right. And then, of course, we need to see some benefits and payoffs, both economic and environmental, when we do these. So that kind of closes, well, doesn't close, almost closes our cycle with the fourth step. So talk to us about that.
Right. So then at the end, the question is why, right? Why do we do all this? We measure, we we implement practices on the farm. So the fourth key factor is ecosystem services, or however you call it, soil functional outcomes. But we are targeted at productivity, profitability, and sustainability, right? We do need to produce for to address the global food security, right? We do need profitability. So farm productivity and profitability might be the first thing in the mind of our growers. And then system sustainability. So we do want to farm today and also to leave behind the ground for with its capabilities to produce and feed for the future generations. So that becomes a really key part. Hopefully, we would have enough empirical data to link all the way from practices to indicators to this ecosystem services. And thereby, we will have a good information to inform our incentive programs or policies. Hopefully, that will also reinforce the farmer's motivation for stewardship. So we'll have a very good balance of stewardship, regulation, sustainability if we have this fourth box also checked.
Sure. And then we just loop around again. Once we have the proof, we bring it back, say keep doing it or that didn't work. So I'm going to insert a couple questions here that I didn't include in our outline. So I apologize in advance. But I'm curious about how the development of these concepts of the soil health gap and soil health cycle kind of came about. Like what was the need that inspired you to kind of figure out this cycle, as well as I'm curious how the process went of kind of developing the cycle. Like, was it easy to just see what they were doing in healthcare and just map it over? Were there additional steps that, maybe didn't get the cut? Like, how did you narrow that down when everything is so complex?
Right. As my primary work in soil fertility, but still as soil health gained some traction, that's been such a blessing. Soil science has become a cool subject, right? Suddenly. Um, so we are here as researchers and also as educators, really to drive the forward the science of soil health. So that's how we came up with the soil health gap concept, where we really wanted to have a benchmarking system for soil health measurements. So, as researchers, first we get into the measurements, right? But as researchers, our job is also to ask a right question and then get after it, right? So, I always feel if it's an easy thing, then why not everybody's doing it, right? So then you realize as you get into the weeds of the things, it's not easy. It's easy things are actually complicating. So that's when we realize, okay, if we can put together all the factors and actors that are involved in making the soil health happen and show their interconnectedness, hopefully that can spur some right conversation into the right direction. So that's how we came up with the cycle. And mindfully, we know there is no such thing as soil health cycle per se, because in the example of nutrient cycle, we know cycle means you have to come back to the same starting point again and again to keep it in a cyclic motion. Uh, but the phrase we kept because for the sake of simplicity, and also I personally loved it, soil health cycle, but it's really the management cycle. And you are right. If we can involve all these four pillars of this cycle in a tight, cohesive, collaborative manner, and then keep making iterations, make inferences, adapting to the system as needed so that over the time we can achieve sustained soil health. And yeah, the fifth factor we didn't talk about here is the time factor, right? Everything takes time. So even managing the expectation, you cannot undo the degradation overnight. So it will take time. So setting the goals right, as we meet the near term um, objectives, also keeping the long term view in under our sight, so that really the stewardship, the sustainability part of the work also continues as we maintain the profitability on the farm. So it's really just thinking holistically, how can we advance the science of soil health and at the same time also achieve the enhanced soil health on the ground for our growers.
I love that. There is something that is so satisfying to me of being able to take, like, not disparate parts, but like individual tiny pieces and categorize them into groups that is like deeply satisfying to me. So I am just in love with this research. Love the concept. So we mentioned already you were kind of doing a literature review as part of this. So now that we've outlined our steps, I would love to hear more about kind of how you did your review there and what you found.
Right. So, as educators, as researchers, you can be involved in any facets of this cycle, right? So, I have a very little work in working with policymakers or industries, although we do have some work, but primary focus is really our growers doing our science on the ground. So that's where then we found kind of lacking. What we did was we searched for publications first 2 decades of this century from 2000 to 2020s. Um, very encouraging trend. A lot of work on soil health has been reported, and then we intentionally put in our search criteria. How many of those literature reports on practices connecting it to the soil health indicators, also with productivity or profitability or sustainability part, ecosystem service part. And majority of the work are presenting those linkages separately, practices to indicators or practices to the productivity primarily. And in recent literature, we could see more economics are coming up. So that's very encouraging. But our thought is, if we can really demonstrate the linkage of practices to indicators and the outcomes, functional outcomes, then that will be right home run, and that will really inform any programs and also enhance the adoption much easier. Because at the end, the question is for farmer: if I do this on my farm, okay, let's say I do no-till, maybe my infiltration of water is enhanced, um, aggregation might be getting better, but am I getting extra bushels? Am I profiting out of that? So definitely no-tilling enhances structures or aggregations, but when it comes to the crop production, it's very nuanced, right? It's very context dependent. So our also thought is not only filling in this gap will help uh, in one way, but the other way it also helps is that probably when it comes to soil health, also one size perhaps doesn't fit all. So if we have a broad data on this three-way linkage, probably we can teach apart soil conditions or environmental conditional confounding factor. Thereby, we can really recommend soil health practices very contextually.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the show. Interested in learning more? Bijesh's paper, Soil Health Cycle, published in AgriSystems Geosciences and Environment, is always freely available. If you are a certified crop advisor or certified professional soil scientist, you can take a quiz for continuing education units for this episode, which can be found in our show notes or on certifiedcropadvisor.org. Let's get back to the show. Yeah, I'm happy to hear that you found, some positives, things improving, ways we can fill some of those gaps. And I think that is all wonderful to be able to kind of tease apart some of what is in the research that we have now. But I think also there's value in scaling that out a little bit, because you're not necessarily going to capture all of the complexity of the cycle. Certainly, some of the human dimensions might not make it into like a research paper. So scaling this out a little bit more to the full scope of this project, the cycle, the review, taking it all together, like where are we at? What's like the good and bad? Where is the cycle, breaking down in what you've seen? You've talked about some of the knowledge gaps, but if there's anything else there, the time and outreach factors, tell me about all that.
Right. So first, let me tell you on research side some of the good work we find out. But again, you're right. I mean, we have limited resources. We cannot do everything. Even in our this literature review, we didn't go after everything. We also narrowed down our work by picking just few indicators. We figure out that a lot of work on soil health reporting is on soil carbon, respiration when it comes to biology, bio, the biomass, microbial biomass. So we picked only few indicators like that and tried to see have people done or reported work linking practices to those few indicators and then all the way to their soil functional outcomes. And there were some really impactful work. There was a work from I think it's Isaac Vendig. I think that team is from Berkeley. They did a review paper, and here's the thing: what they found was when soil organic carbon is below 1%, they showed a direct connection of cover cropping, improving soil health, and then all the way improving the crop production. So that's what I'm saying. If you have that kind of data set, now you know when my organic carbon is very low, like here in Nebraska Panhandle, we can see soils like that in the top 6-8 inch. We do have ground with lower than 1%. So now you know, okay, if you can make cover crop work, these are the areas where you will benefit the soil, and then you will also see the crop production benefit. So there are quite a bit of good work like that. I mean, all work are good. I mean, the comprehensive work which shows linkages between three things that we have been talking about. Same way on soybean. There was some work in Canada, adding cereal crop in the continuous soybean. They showed the connection, you know, all the way to indicators to the crop production benefit. Another soybean work in north central states. So there are pretty good works showing that kind of 3 point linkages, and that's what, as a researcher, we've been we urge people in that paper that when you do your soil health work, don't stop at the just reporting soil health indicators. Just go a step ahead and show some economic or sustainability or production impact as well. Or if you are doing functional outcome reporting, then don't go, don't skip the indicators. Please report indicators as well. And then when we'll have regional data coming out like that, then things will be much more easier. So um, I think I'm not in a position to say where things are breaking down. I'm actually very, very motivated. Soil health as a science, it's growing. Soil health is also a movement, right? It has really spurred good collaboration, good um, um, excitement among stakeholders. Everybody feels like it's done really good to us. So um, we didn't talk much here. The negative part of the feedback cycle that we talk in our paper, things can go the other way around too. If a person is really struggling, really isolated, no support, um, cannot adapt and adopt new practices, then conventional practices like monocropping or tilling too much, leaving the bare ground, will deplete the soil resources so badly that it can take us to a very acute condition where soil function just collapses, and then folks will rely more heavily on inputs, and just instead of virtuous cycle of soil health, now you go into the reverse, a vicious cycle of soil degradation. So we want to prevent that, right? We don't want that, and stop as early as possible. So there comes in then incentive programs, policies, hopefully is out there, and information is key, I assume. We did some survey. No, the survey is from somewhere else. I think we saw that how when growers are not fed with enough information, then there is reluctance. Something like carbon market, right? Not everybody is excited to enroll because so many uncertainties, not only with payment, but I mean, how does it work? How do you measure the carbon? Does that help me in my productivity, profitability? So information is key. That's why collaboration among ag professionals, university researchers, agencies, inviting more growers for their input would be very key.
Yeah, I love that. I'm a big fan of, the communication, the community, all kind of pulling together to make progress is huge. And I think it's great to also point out, like, what's at risk when we're not actively, spinning the wheel forward. Like you said,
Right.
you're helping or you're harming the soil. There's not really a, that staying place is not really sustainable over time. And also, just shout out for any farmers who are looking for resources on the carbon markets. The societies do have Decode 6, which is our website that's all about just getting people the information that they need. So we'll include a link to that in the show notes for sure. So obviously you said, there's this movement happening. There's, more research coming out all the time. We're, getting into this positive cycle. So what are kind of the next steps for, kind of closing the cycle and closing the loop to make sure that there's not that breakdown? And specifically, I mean, generally, yes, but also specifically for researchers, like what can they be doing to kind of move things forward, or implementing this cycle in their own work, which is kind of a later question, but maybe we'll sneak it in here. We'll see.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I can speak for myself. I've been learning that I need to be out there more often among our growers, go to them. Um, so that's why we even envision a program on soil health where we are not inviting people to university event. We are like, oh, Of course, we are doing that for other stuff, but on soil health, my program has come up with a program, Nebraska Soil Health School, where we were telling people, please invite us. We'll come to you and then talk to you what you need, what you want us to work upon, and then we go to them. We go to their community, um, meet with them. So I think getting out is more important and listening before I speak anything. I would rather learn what people are thinking, what where they see I can fit in. In Nebraska, we have a Soil Health Coalition recently instituted. They are starting a peer-to-peer learning hub. I think getting into those type of community groupings and learning, listening what their needs are, that will really help us as a researcher and educator to participate in a way that it's really impactful for our growers. And then as researchers, we have our own collaboration going on regionally, nationally, and then identifying. I think right question is very important before going after answers, right? So something like this, we felt like, oh, if you can connect these three dots, things will be much easier to promote the adoption of the practices, right? Uh, of course, it won't be easy yet. We will need more support in terms of resources and educational programs, but definitely it will move the needle. So yeah, more communication, and then hopefully that will lead us to more impactful collaboration.
So I have 3 questions left for you then. So the first one is if listeners would like to learn more about any of the things that we've talked about today, where can they go?
Um, I can prop up my own website, but I would say if you're really interested to learn about some of this scientific work on soil health gap, soil health cycle, we kept the phrase very simple, so it really sticks. So you can just search up in the website. It will give you these are open source journal articles, and I promise you they are very short, quick to read. So soil health gap, soil health cycle, you can search it up, and if you personally have anything that I can participate in and or a question that I can answer, you can reach out to me. You can find me in our Nebraska University website, or I have my program website, www.maharjanlab.com.
Awesome. We will include links to all of those resources in the show notes as well so people can get in touch. So the next question then is if people want to get involved, and that could be any person that is anywhere in that cycle, what can they do?
Right. I think since things are so region or site specific, I'm sure you'll find a group in your own local vicinity that's involved in soil health. University can be a really good start. I'm sure every land grant university in every state has soil health programs going on. So getting involved that way, depending, in which part of the cycle you find yourself, accordingly you can find the connection. Do you need to work with your ag professionals or researchers in the university, or even from your peers if you are a farmer? Definitely there are some who have set out on this journey long ago, watching them do right things, learning from them. That can also be a nice thing. uh, but I'm sure there would be a something in your vicinity. If not, I would be glad to um, connect you to folks I know in your area. Um, for example, in our High Plains here, recently we started a High Plains Soil Health group among all the land grant universities. Um, I think I should give a shout out to Jim Ippolito, a professor at CSU. Now he moved to Ohio, though, but he spearheaded this effort to make a soil health group for our area here in High Plains, in north central, western part of the state, all across the state. There's a lot of soil health activities happening. So yeah, go and check it out.
Yeah, for sure. Great advice. We'll include links to any of that as well. So then, what is one fun fact listeners wouldn't know about you if all they had was your research?
Something useful, though, right? I would start with one on my own research. I was going to say, I speak Russian, which is true. I'm not from Russia, though, but I went to school, so I speak Russian. But another thing I want to throw out here, since this is happening, Soil Science Society of America Journal, I'm guest editing a special session on supracentennial experiments. So supracentennial, as the name suggests, it means more than 100 years old. So agricultural research that has been running for more than 100 years old. So we are compiling research papers from those very, very limited sites in the world. So it's coming up. We have put out the call for the papers. There are very few known supracentennial sites in America, in North America. I know of 5 or 6 of them, and maybe a dozen for the whole world. So yeah, look out for that session. And if you know of anyone, or you are one of those who happen to manage or have worked on supracentennial, please consider submitting a manuscript.
Yeah. Wow. What a cool topic. I love that. Our special sections are a lot of fun. It's always fun to see papers come out of that. And maybe if you submit, you could be featured on the show at some point in future. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. Very satisfying for me to be able to talk to you about this. So thank you so much for all of the work that you're doing on this and continue to do. And yeah, let's keep moving forward together, everybody.
Thank you, Abby, for the opportunity to come and talk.
Thank you for listening to Field Lab Earth. More information can be found in the description below. Thank you.